Hi, I'm Judith Dreyer. Thank you for joining me for this podcast series, The Holistic Nature of Us. My intent is to take us, you and I, into a better understanding of the concepts behind our holistic nature and how that ties directly to the holistic nature of the world around us. How can we connect the dots in practical ways that we are nature and nature is in us? I will be featuring authors and educators, practitioners, and others whose passion for this earth helps us create bridges. We'll see what's trending, what's relevant to our world today, not just for land use, but to connect the dots between ourselves and nature. It's time for practical action and profound inner change so our natural world is valued once again. And today I'd like to introduce you to my guest, Pam Montgomery. Pam is an author, a teacher, a practitioner who has been investigating plants and trees and their intelligent spiritual nature for more than 3 decades. She is the founding member of United Plant Savers and more recently the Organization of Nature Evolutionaries, or O.N.E. She's also the author of 2 books. The highly acclaimed Plant Spirit Healing, A Guide to Working with Plant Consciousness, and Partner Earth, A Spiritual Ecology. Welcome, Pam.
Hi, Judith. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted. And I'm really delighted, not just delighted, but absolutely curious and interested in this new organization called O.N.E, the Organization of Nature Evolutionaries, of which you're a founding member. Could you tell us more about that and the mission of this organization?
Well, yes, primarily our mission has to do with living in co-creative partnership with all of life, with the plants, the trees, the animals, the elements, all of nature, and also to be bringing forward earth rights and the understanding that the earth and all of its aspects like rivers and forests and all of that have a right to live and to exist. And so there's a big movement right now across the globe, really, in lots of different areas where about Earth rights. And so we are also very much in support of Earth rights and do as much as we can to bring the knowledge about Earth rights and how to go about working in this way. So we're trying to educate people about that. We also very much integral into the work that we do is bringing in the sacred. So being aware that we are working with a very highly intelligent natural world, and plants and trees are a part of that, of course, and that this biointelligence that's all around us, it has a sacred quality to it, has a quality to it that is connects to that source energy place. And so we want to bring that in as well, like this understanding that the earth and all of her beings are sacred, and that we need to treat the earth in that way. And when we treat the earth and nature as a sacred being, it's less likely that we'll completely destroy the earth. So that's kind of some of the stuff we're about, and it's very exciting. It's great.
Well, it has to be somewhat challenging too, because we still have the mindset to command and control. And what you're suggesting and these movements are suggesting is more of a collaborative effort so that we work together. In my world, I feel we're one of many species. So, and we're also a predator species. So that tells me that we have a responsibility to manage how we approach the world and how we take from the world, so to speak, on all those different levels. So tell us a little bit about just a basic approach you might take in a class to get people to understand there's intelligence in nature.
Mm-hmm. Well, depending on the class, but I do a lot of plant communication classes, and we've actually taken it kind of beyond plant communication and going very deep with plants, called plant initiations. So in a plant communication class, what we would do is have the opportunity to spend with a plant that calls you, one that's, calls you. And we might sit with the plant. We might go through our sensory awareness, so all of our 5 senses, and experience the plant that way. We also tap into the vibratory resonance of the plant, and everything has a resonance, and we have a resonance. Plants have a resonance, and the idea is for us to eventually is to match the vibratory resonance, or ride that same wavelength with the plant, or the tree, so that we can it's like when you match resonance with a plant, it's like, you're there, you're right there, you're riding that wave, that frequency with the plant, and it's like looking out from the eyes of the plant. It's like you actually merge on a vibratory level. And so that's another thing that we would do. And you receive that resonance as a felt sensation, a sensation in your body somewhere, a sensation. And you identify that, and then you become aware that, oh, this is how my body senses, and we're not talking emotion, senses the vibratory resonance of this plant. And so you identify it so that you can then call it back up. So those are a couple things that we do. I mean, we also do work with the daydream, being in the daydream of the plant, and we work with breath. We work with our breath with the plant. We do shamanic journeying with the plant, which is like, using a drum or a rattle to be able to go into that other dimensional reality where the plant spirit lives. So that's some of the plant communication stuff that we do. And it's really wonderful because it helps people to realize that, oh, these plants are intelligent as well, and they actually have something to share with me, and there's an exchange, mm-hmm. And it's exchange. I mean, the simple, simple kind of things that we have exchanged with. But what the realization is that happens for people is that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for plants.
That's right.
I mean, all of our oxygen, all of our tissue, all of our food, I mean, it just goes on and on. So that awareness kind of comes in, and it changes things. It changes how you relate to the natural world when you realize that, oh, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for these plants and trees. Then the other thing we're doing is plant initiations. We just had one last weekend with nettle, and this was a benefit for the Organization of Nature Evolutionaries. And so everybody comes for 3 days, and we make what I call an elixir. It's not technically an elixir, but basically I call it that. But it's like we take different parts of the plants, make different preparations, so alcohol-based, water-based, an essence, and we combine all of this together to make an elixir. And then we spend 3 days mostly fasting, not eating very much, so that we drink this elixir 2 ounces 8 times. So we drink 16 ounces over a period of 3 days. And we do all these different things, and we're just working with one plant for 3 days. And it's amazing. It is super amazing what happens. And it's, here, these are common plants. We're not talking like psychotropic right. plants. We're not talking about ayahuasca or any of that kind of stuff. We're talking about common everyday plants right outside your door. And what you do is, as you're gathering for the initiation, gathering the plant, every step of the way, you're treating the plant as a sacred being. Every single step of the way. When you harvest, when you make it into a preparation, when you're mixing the elixir, all of it is in a ceremonial context. And so that's how you're treating the plant. When plants are treated like sacred beings, it really changes things. And so, in how they interact with you. So this whole idea of initiation, I mean, originally it was a young people being initiated into the tribe. That was what it was originally. Now we don't have very many initiations left anymore, and most of the elders have passed on. So there's not maybe in a few little isolated pockets on the planet, but not really. So part of the plant's evolution is that they're stepping up to the plate and becoming the elders. The plants and the trees are becoming the elders, and they are initiating us into what it means to be truly human within the collective. So how is it that we be on this planet and living within the collective of humans and nature and animals and all of it. And how do we do that and let it be okay that we are different and unique beings, that we're not little carbon copies of each other, and that it's okay to live within this diversity and thrive. So the plants and trees are actually stepping up to take on the role of the elder, initiating us into what it means to be truly human, living within the collective. It's quite powerful. It's really, really awesome. Yeah.
It has to be. So it's hard to describe that, isn't it? Because
Yes.
unless you experience it, it's very hard to get that feeling across. So I want to go back to a couple points that you mentioned. First of all, in the holistic nature of us, one of the principles on the wheel that I use is intuition, and that's the center. So we know we have an intuitive sense, right?
Yeah.
And I want to stress to our listeners that the natural world accesses us through that intuitive sense. So that to me makes it practical in terms of understanding. So if people can relate to the fact of they come to a street corner and they have a feeling to go right instead of left, and they're so glad they went right because they find out there's a traffic jam if they went left. That gives us a practical way of understanding intuition. We have a gut feeling. It's part of our inner radar or inner makeup. But the dot that you've connected with the work that you're doing is that sense, that intuitive sense, really helps us get in tune with nature in a way that we have not been taught before. So programs like yours are teaching us how to use that sense to get back into communication with nature. And I love what you said about the trees and plants becoming our elders and the fact that there's an intelligence there. You know, we think of intelligence as somebody who has a high IQ and, you know, can read a physics manual in 2 seconds, you know, but there's more to intelligence than that. There's an operating system that says this really works, and how come you're not paying attention, right? Nature has those systems in place. So tell me more on your work on that level, because I think it's really important to highlight that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes. Well, the whole intelligence, biointelligence is quite, up and coming nowadays. I mean, there's a lot being written about it. And, so people are, at least in the scientific community, there's a huge wake up to like, oh, there's this massive intelligence out here. And there's the whole biomimicry thing now that,
Right.
that there's a book written about that where, they're observing nature and mimicking nature and realizing like here is this is all in place and it's been here for what 3.6 billion years or some astronomical amount of time. And it's like plants and trees in the natural world have the long view. Here's the long view where we've been here like what is it like if you look at the whole thing like I don't know 1 second or 2 seconds. I mean if you look at the time span.
Right.
We're just a blip, we're just a blip compared to like how long plants and trees have been here in the natural world. So this intelligence, so there's actually an understanding right now in the science. This is in the science, and it was the point at which, and I think it's 2.3 billion, not million, billion years ago, was the point at which algae and the early life forms, plant life forms, began to make decisions, began to say, like about inheriting qualities, about how to reproduce, about making decisions about form and function and all of that. And this started like billions of years ago. And so the understanding now in the science is that our what would be called higher mind or conscious awareness the evolution of that began when plants started to make decisions 2.3 billion years ago. And so it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
So there's this understanding now, or I should say a hypothetical theory now that our cognitive abilities, our conscious awareness evolved from plants. And so it's kind of like this whole intelligence thing it's like we have intelligence in one way, but plants and trees have been developing intelligence for billions of years. So it, like you say, it's like, it's not about IQ or any of that. It's about like being able to tap into this unified field that we're all a part of. Mm-hmm. And so nature is always giving us, talk about intuition, there's all these little touches all the time. You're mm-hmm. always getting these touches from nature. And when you pay attention to it, mm-hmm. Yep. This is the key with intuition, right? You could be like, oh, whatever. Oh, that's just my imagination, or whatever excuses we make. Or we can pay attention and, mm-hmm. and listen and observe and be like, oh, okay, here's the information that's trying to be given to me. Or here, if I pay attention to this, then I'll have a deeper understanding, or I'll have a level of communication that I can tap into. So it's really, to me, it's just really about, we have everything we need. We have the ability, it's our birthright. It's part of our birthright to be able to communicate with the natural world. It's like, so this is another aspect that's in the science right now. It's called biophilia, which is, basically means the love of natural processes, or the love of nature. And I extend that to the love of plants and trees. Oh, sorry, that phone is ringing anyway.
Okay. We're good.
It's my answering machine's going to pick it up. So the biophilia, they're actually searching for a gene in our genetic makeup. They're searching for that part of us, that hardwired part of us that absolutely has to be, has a need to be close to nature because of our long-time association and our symbiotic relationship with the natural world. It's like we would not have our lives if we didn't have this natural world out here. And so this whole thing of biophilia is like wow. So then there's this connection on an emotional level. It's like, because there's this, I would say, love, it engenders this love of the natural world, and it's a two-way street. It's nature's love for us and our love for nature. Mm-hmm. And so here comes the emotional piece of it. We've got the cognitive awareness from plants. We've got this emotional tie with nature. We already know the physical one. I mean, mm-hmm. Breath, tissue, all that. And then there's the spiritual aspect. So biophilia is where there's, they're in the science, they're trying to identify a gene, an actual gene that's so part of our genetic makeup that engenders this love for nature, because it has to do with the need to be in close proximity to nature, and that because of our long-time association and our symbiotic relationship with nature, and we actually need this. And so you look at and it engenders this emotional connection. And you look at this and you say, well, let's see, about 150 years ago was when people started to leave the land, leave the farms, go to the city, and all of that. And if you look at the Increase in, I'll say dis-ease, mm-hmm. but all the stuff now, all the chronic stuff, all the stuff that people are being confronted with, it has a lot to do with because of the lack of proximity to nature, mm-hmm. and the lack of involvement with nature. So much of the compromise is around that. So we've got all of our physical needs are met, our cognitive abilities have risen from plants, this emotional tie, this engendering of the love vibration with the natural world, and then there's our spiritual aspect. And so I look at that, and within the last 20, 30, 40, in the last stretch of time, since the 60s anyway, let's say, that there's been this explosion in the interest in plants like psychotropic plants, flower essences, plant spirit healing. So working with plants on another level, on like this energetic level, vibratory level, I'll call it spiritual level. And that, so plants have always preceded their animal counterparts in evolution across the board, always have from day one. So here we are at this stage. And what I see is that this interest, this desire, this need and want to be with plants in a bigger way, in like understanding like this energetic, spiritual, intelligent nature of the plants. I think what's happening is that the plants, one more time, are preceding us in our evolution. And now it's a spiritual evolution. We've already evolved fairly far physically. So now this evolution that we're involved in right now is of a spiritual nature. And the plants are preceding us in that evolution, just like they always have. And so they're guiding us into this place of evolving spiritually and raising our consciousness to the point of that we stop destroying the planet. I think that's the bottom line.
I agree with you. I think that they're putting out the clarion call. You know, the earth is going to be fine. I don't know that humans are going to be fine, but the earth will be fine because her rate of healing and growth is different from our human nature, or what our human nature perceives. You know, we've evolved today because of our technology ahead of our maturity, you know, so everything happens in a nanosecond, so we expect nature to just work in a nanosecond. And it doesn't work that way. So the work that you do slows us down. Can you imagine, I mean, working with one plant for 3 days instead of going to the store and saying, you know, I want it now, and there it is.
Right.
And the mass-produced energetics of creating that plant is so different from what our ancestors taught us about the plant world.
Right. Yeah, so the whole slowing down thing, that's a really good point, because plants and trees and the natural world in general, not across the board, but in general, moves at a much slower pace than we do. And so one of the ways in tapping into the natural world and into plants and trees and water and all of that is slow it down, you know, and part of that is shifting the brain waves. And so we're operating in beta, you know, that's kind of the waking state, is in beta. And what we want to do is bring it down a couple notches to alpha. You know, we bring our brain waves down to alpha. Let's see. I have a little brain wave chart here that I love to look at. So beta is waking, our waking state. Alpha is kind of is the state of starting to go into a it could even be like when you're falling asleep, like, but that is just like your brain waves are slowing down. So you're going, so beta is 13 to 30 hertz and alpha is 8 to 13 hertz. And then theta is like 4 to 7 hertz. So ideally what you're doing is you're just slowing your brain waves down so that you can come to the same level. And the slower you go, of course, the deeper the meditative state, you know. So it's really about just allowing that to happen, and instead of like still trying to like balance your checkbook in your head while you're sitting with a plant, you know, it's like you want to get out of it. You want to get out of that beta state. So, and that's a simple way. Now I feel like when I go out and I sit with a plant, just being in the presence of the plant helps me to slow down. You know, it just helps me to just like take it down a few notches. And so,
but doesn't also too, on that same level, when we go out in nature, you know, I work a lot with the master gardeners in the gardening world, and they're not so much into this aspect of it. But what does everybody say when spring comes? I can't wait to get out and put my hands in the dirt. I can't wait to get out into my garden. There's something that happens to us on an emotional level, and science has actually named that particular ingredient in soil. I believe it's called Geosman, that's in the soil that we actually breathe, and we actually ingest it even though we're not aware of it, just because of working with the soil. That slows down the brain waves and makes us feel more peaceful, more relaxed. But even just taking a hike in the woods, you know, I find it so curious that we have to label sitting on the ground and make a movement out of it when our elders told us, take off your shoes, go walk barefoot for 15 minutes a day and get grounded. But now we have this grounding, earthing movement out there, which I think is
forest therapy,
yes,
therapy, all of that. I mean, now you can get certified in forest therapy where you're
my goodness,
you're trained on taking a walk in the woods.
Oh, please. We're silly creatures, aren't we? But anyway, the good part about all of that is it is raising awareness. You may know of the book, The Last Child in the Woods, where he's got some very serious concerns about what we see in the school system. Kids are not going out there. On another level, we have this very interesting school, I believe it's in the South Pacific, where people are bringing their children from all over the world, and they've created the school system within nature. The kids, if they want a coconut, they have to learn to climb the tree and go get it themselves. And part of the principle is kids are going to fall, they're going to get hurt, they have to learn. We're so afraid in some of our urban communities for a bug to come in the house and, a bunny rabbit to eat all our raspberries. And how do we create the bridge in our urban communities that it's just as important there as it is out in the rural areas?
Well, that's kind of interesting you bring that up, because this is kind of an issue these days with lots of people, is a fear of nature, or a fear of being outdoors, and the primary one that's driving that is Lyme disease.
Right.
And so that's a really interesting kind of twist that's happening right now, and I see it a lot. And so it's like, okay, so here we are, in a situation where, I mean, you walk outside your door and you, oh my God, it's so beautiful, it's paradise. And at the same time, there's, as we were talking earlier, there's wild parsnip, which you get the juice on, and it's going to give you a burn on your hand, and it's very prolific. And then there's Lyme disease, which is carried by ticks, and ticks are getting to be more present. Not that every tick is infected with Lyme disease, however. So it's just this real interesting dynamic now of like, how do we adapt, and how do we be with nature in its evolution, and realizing that there, those like prolific proliferation of ticks and everything, there's a reason why this is happening, and which I personally think has to do with our agricultural practices and the imbalance on the planet. So anyway, but that's something that we have to be aware of and be conscious of, and it doesn't mean don't go outside, of course.
Right.
But how do we manage this? How do we work with this? How do we integrate this? And so these are all questions that we have right now at this stage of like, how to manage all this, how to manage ourselves. So anyway.
And we know there's practical things we can do. I'm a hiker. I go out in the woods and I go off the trail too, just because I know the area. And I rarely come back with a tick. And that's been a surprising thing for me, is to step off a trail, and there's certain areas, yes, if it's deeply filled with a lot of brush, I'll probably get a tick. Yeah. But walking in between saplings, whatever, I come home and I really don't have a tick on me. But I'm diligent about checking for it. And that's the key. We can go out in nature, but that's the key. Put your pants inside your socks and wear a hat and wear light clothing, and use the natural sprays if you have them and have access to them. you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can do some of those things, but I still see a fear amongst parents with young children. They don't want them to play outside.
Right. Right. And so, that's part of me feels like, so here's this side of it, and it's like, oh my God, we could get Lyme disease on this side of it. And so what's on the flip side of the coin? What's on the back side of the coin? Is there a gift in this anywhere for us? Is it possible that, one of the things I have found personally, I don't get ticks either, by the way. They don't like me. They don't care about me, seemingly. Every now and then there'll be one crawling on me, but I hardly ever have had one embedded. So for me, but I'm not being in denial, and I'm trying to be smart about it. But what it's done for me is that it actually makes me more aware. I'm actually come into a larger awareness and conscious awareness of my environment, where I'm walking, how I'm walking. Am I in tall grass now? Am I in, where am I? Where am I in the landscape, and how do I read this landscape? Does this look like a tick area or not? Or, so it's just, and then when I come back, like you say, you check yourself out. And so it's like, wow, like I really haven't done that kind of thing with myself in forever. And so it's kind of like, so then I have to have a heightened awareness of myself as well.
Right.
Because I have to look and I have to check and I have to see and feel and touch and like what's going on here on this body of mine. And so in a way, it's this kind of strange thing of bringing more awareness into my realm of who I am, where I am in my landscape, and how I'm going to interact with my landscape. So,
and I think that's the underlying principle about how to approach nature today, too. Because if we approach it with awareness, number one, there's tremendous gifts there. I think nature's more forgiving than we are in some ways. I really do. Nature wants us to work with her in all its aspects, if we can open ourselves to that, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, Pam, our time is been well used this morning. I'm really grateful for all the things that you shared. Before we go, can you give us sort of summarize or give us 3 tips that are very practical?
Sure. And sometimes people like want to make this into like really hard work. It's not at all. It's all very simple, and basically where we need to be at this point in time is to take up our rightful place within nature again. We're a part of nature too. And so we need to step into, our rightful heritage, birthright of being a part of nature, and step into that role, which is to be a steward of the land and of nature. And so like to realize that we are a part of nature, and simple things like walking out the door in the morning and taking 1 minute that, again, this doesn't have, you don't have to do this, for an hour. It's like 1 minute to consciously breathe and being aware that your in-breath is, oxygen that you're receiving from all the trees and the grass and all the green beings are breathing out oxygen and breathing in carbon dioxide. So our out breath is the plants and trees in breath, and the plants and trees out breath is our in breath. So we're doing this cycle of breath. So we're in exchange. So this is such a simple but very profound, when you bring it into conscious awareness, way of connecting with the natural world. And we do it every second of every minute of every hour of every day. So that's a really important. So that means that, we don't need to hunt for being in relationship. We already are in relationship with the plants and the trees because we breathe. So that's super simple. And then, you might have little, rituals in the morning, like a daily ritual that you bring in. And, I'm an early riser, so I really love when the sun is rising. At this time of the year, it rises pretty early, but just that moment. And here you are, and the birds are singing, everybody's waking up to the day, and the birds are singing, and here comes this beautiful sun up over the mountain, the sunrise, and you just take it. So there's this Buddhist practice where when the sun rises, there's a wave of heat that it pushes forward this wave of heat. So the Buddhist monks stand there at sunrise, and they allow this first breath, they would call it the breath of the sun, this first breath of the sun to just wash over them. And to begin your day, and again, 5 minutes, simple. It doesn't have to take a long time. To begin your day, each and every day, with greeting the sun is, boy, it sure sets everything. It puts you on the right foot for just simple ceremonies. And there's other things that you can do too, as simple ways to be with nature. I like to be in reciprocity, so like giving back, like there's this reciprocal relationship. And so I'll carry with me like maybe a pouch of beads or maybe some tobacco or something, so that I can, when I'm with a plant and we're making a connection, I give something back. I leave something there as so the plant knows that I'm really wanting to be in this reciprocal relationship. So, connecting in and with some aspect of nature, each and every day, and go barefoot, like you said earlier. Go barefoot.
Those are great
to connect.
Thank you. Those are great. Yeah. Great tips. Great reminders. Pam, and just before we leave, how about your contact information? How do people get in touch with you?
Right. Well, I have a new website right now, which I'm very happy about. It's called Wake Up to Nature, www.wakeuptonature.com. So please visit my website. And I'm actually working on this next coming week, putting together an online course. So that's kind of one of the new big things that's happening in my life, is putting. And I'm not a very techie person, so I'm kind of like, how does this work? Plants on the computer. But I'm sure that I can figure it out.
Well, you have been so successful with all your endeavors, especially connecting the dots between us and plants. So I'm sure it's going to be a great success. I really am.
Thank you.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Pam and I go way back. We're herbal friends from a long time ago, and I am always inspired by her wisdom, what she's played forward, and how she walks her talk. And for that, I have a great deal of respect for you, Pam, and I'm grateful. So this is Judith Dreyer. I'm the author of At the Garden's Gate book and blog. For more information, please go to my website, judithdreyer.com. You'll find information about this podcast, the written transcript, as well as my class schedule. And please, everyone, like and share. We all need to support each other. I like to end with a quote from Paul Hawken. He's an environmentalist and author who reminds us, sustainability, ensuring the future life on Earth, is an infinite game, the endless expression on behalf of all. Have a great day.